My name is David, and this story takes place in our home nestled in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. It was a quaint, quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knew each other, and kids played on the streets until the streetlights came on. Life seemed idyllic on the surface, but as with many things, appearances I met my wife, Amanda, 12 years ago at a friend's wedding. She was charming, beautiful, and full of life. We fell in love quickly, got married within a year, and soon after, we blended our families. I had a son from a previous marriage, Jason, who was 18 at the time, and she had a daughter, Emily, who was 8. Despite the challenges of blending families, we made it work. Or so I thought. Amanda and I built what seemed to be a perfect life together. I worked as a financial analyst, a job that paid well, but demanded long hours. Amanda, on the other hand, was a stay-at-home mom. She was the one who held the family together. Or at least, that's what I believed. Jason moved in with us after graduating high school, and had been living with us while he attended the local community college. Emily, now 16, was a bright, spirited teenager, full of dreams and ambitions. Our house was a 2-story colonial with a white picket fence, a well-manicured lawn, and a garden Amanda took great pride in. Inside, it was filled with warmth and memories. Family photos lining the walls, mementos from trips, and the general chaos that comes with teenagers. I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. But life has a way of throwing unexpected curveballs, and mine was about to hit me with the force of a freight train. Looking back, the signs were there, but I was too blinded by trust to see them. Amanda had always been a bit of a social butterfly, so it wasn't unusual for her to spend time out with friends. Lately, though, her outings had become more frequent, and her explanations less convincing. It started with small things. Amanda began dressing up more than usual, spending extra time in front of the mirror before heading out. When I asked her where she was going, she would say she was meeting friends or attending a book club. Sometimes she would mention running errands that took hours longer than expected. I didn't think much of it at first. She deserved time for herself, after all. However, her behavior at home started changing too. She became more distant, less affectionate. Our conversations dwindled, and when we did talk, she seemed distracted. The intimacy we once shared evaporated, replaced by a growing emotional chasm. I chalked it up to the stress of raising a teenager and the normal ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. One evening, I noticed her phone buzzing incessantly. She used to be open about her messages, often sharing funny texts with me or the kids. But recently, she had become more secretive, quickly putting her phone away when I was near. When I casually asked who she was texting, she would brush it off, saying it was just a friend or a conversation about some community event. My son Jason, who had always been close to Amanda, started to act strangely too. He became more withdrawn, spending most of his time locked away in his room or out with friends. I assumed it was just typical teenage behavior, but there was a tension in the house that I couldn't quite place. Emily, too, seemed more on edge, but she was at an age where mood swings were commonplace, so I didn't give it much thought. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon. Amanda had gone out again, claiming she needed to buy groceries for the week. After several hours, I realized she hadn't returned. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. My anxiety began to rise, but I told myself she was probably caught up with something and had lost track of time. When she finally came home, I noticed she looked disheveled, her hair slightly messy and her makeup smudged. She tried to act normal, but I could sense her unease. I asked her if everything was okay, and she gave me a hurried, almost defensive explanation about running into an old friend and getting caught up talking. As the days passed, my suspicions grew. Amanda's behavior didn't improve. In fact, it seemed to get worse. She was often on edge, snapping at me and the kids over the smallest things. I tried to be understanding, thinking she might be going through something she didn't want to talk about. But there was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, a suspicion I couldn't shake. One night after another tense dinner, I decided to look at her phone. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone resting on the coffee table. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked it up, feeling like a trespasser in my own home. The screen was locked, and I didn't know the passcode. I put it down, ashamed of my actions, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The following week, Amanda announced she was going to visit her sister for the weekend. It wasn't unusual for her to spend time with family, but something about her tone seemed off. I decided to call her sister, just to confirm. When her sister told me she hadn't heard from Amanda in weeks, my heart sank. It was clear that Amanda was hiding something, and I needed to find out what it was. The house was eerily quiet that weekend. Amanda had left early Saturday morning, claiming she needed to help her sister with some household project. Jason and Emily were out with friends, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I tried to distract myself with work and chores, but the gnawing suspicion kept me on edge. As evening approached, I decided to confront Amanda. I called her, but she didn't answer. I sent her a text, asking how things were going with her sister, but there was no reply. My frustration grew, and I resolved to find out the truth. I remembered the GPS tracker I had bought for our car a few years ago, after a minor theft scare in the neighborhood. It was meant for security, but now it served a different purpose. I opened the tracking app on my phone and was relieved to see it still worked. The app showed that Amanda's car was parked at a motel on the other side of town. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen, the reality of the situation sinking in. Determined to catch her in the act, I grabbed my keys and drove to the motel. The drive felt like an eternity, my mind racing with possibilities and dread. When I finally arrived, I parked a few blocks away and walked to the motel, trying to calm my nerves. I approached the reception desk, my pulse racing. "Excuse me, I'm looking for my wife Amanda," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She checked in earlier today. Could you tell me which room she's in?" The receptionist eyed me suspiciously. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't give out guest information." I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of frustration. "Please, it's important. I need to find her." Seeing my desperation, the receptionist hesitated, then glanced at the computer screen. "Room 213, she said quietly, pointing me in the right direction. I took a deep breath and made my way to the room. As I stood outside the door, I could hear muffled voices and laughter. My stomach churned, and I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I knocked on the door, my knuckles white from the force. There was a brief pause, then the door opened slightly. Amanda stood there, her face pale and eyes wide with shock. "David, what are you doing here?" I pushed the door open, stepping inside. My eyes immediately locked onto the bed, where Jason was hurriedly trying to cover himself with a sheet. The room reeked of betrayal, the scene confirming my worst fears. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. Amanda stammered, trying to find words, but nothing she could say would make this right. Jason looked horrified, unable to meet my gaze. The sight of them together, in that intimate setting, shattered something deep inside me. "How could you?" I spat, my eyes burning with tears. "How could you do this to our family?" Amanda tried to reach out to me, but I recoiled. "David, please let me explain." "Explain?" I cut her off, my voice rising. "There's nothing to explain, Amanda. I trusted you. I trusted both of you." Jason finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." I looked at him, my son, and felt a wave of sorrow and anger. "You didn't mean for this to happen? You betrayed me. You betrayed your own father." The room was filled with a suffocating silence. Amanda stood there, tears streaming down her face, while Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I drove home, the reality of what I had just witnessed began to sink in. The woman I loved, the son I had raised. They had both betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and disbelief. When I got home, I went straight to the bedroom and collapsed on the bed, the weight of the betrayal crashing down on me. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. That night, I barely slept. The images of Amanda and Jason together haunted me, playing over and over in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. This betrayal couldn't be ignored. It was time to confront them both and decide the future of our shattered family. The following morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't escape. I knew what had to be done. Amanda and Jason couldn't stay under the same roof any longer. Their betrayal was too deep, too damaging. I needed to take control, to start the process of healing, even if it meant making some of the hardest decisions of my life. Amanda and Jason returned home separately, each trying to gauge my reaction. Amanda came in first, her eyes red from crying, looking like she hadn't slept either. Jason followed shortly after, his face pale and filled with remorse. I waited for them in the living room, the tension in the air so thick it was suffocating. Emily was out with friends, and I was grateful for that. She didn't need to witness what was about to unfold. "Sit down," I said, my voice cold and firm. They both hesitated, but did as I asked. Amanda sat on the couch, wringing her hands, while Jason stood nearby, unable to meet my eyes. "We need to talk about what happened," I began, trying to keep my emotions in check. "About what you two did." "David, please," Amanda started, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No, Amanda, I don't want to hear your excuses. There's nothing you can say that will justify what you did. You betrayed me, both of you, and I can't live with that." Tears streamed down Amanda's face. "David, I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you, but please give me a chance to explain. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "You think this is just a mistake? This isn't something you can just apologize for and move on. You've destroyed our family." I turned to Jason, who looked like he was about to collapse under the weight of his guilt. "And you, Jason? How could you? I raised you. I trusted you. How could you do this to me?" Jason finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I don't know what I was thinking." I shook my head, unable to contain my anger. "You didn't think, Jason. That's the problem. You didn't think about the consequences, about how this would affect everyone around you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I can't have either of you here right now. I need space. I need time to figure out what to do next. Amanda, pack your things and go stay with your sister or a friend. Jason, you need to leave too. Find somewhere else to stay." Amanda looked at me, horrified. "David, please don't do this. We can work through this. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said, my voice breaking. "Not right now. Maybe in the future, but not now. I can't even look at you without feeling betrayed. I need you to leave." Jason nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I'll go. I'll find somewhere to stay. I'm so sorry, Dad." I watched as they both went to their rooms to pack, the silence in the house overwhelming. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that they were leaving, that I would have some space to think. Sadness because I knew that my family was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. When Amanda and Jason finally left, I sat alone in the living room, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. The house felt emptier than ever, the echoes of their betrayal haunting every corner. I knew the road ahead would be long and painful, but I also knew that I had to start somewhere. Kicking them out was the first step in reclaiming my life and beginning the healing process. The house was eerily quiet after Amanda and Jason left. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, each second stretching into an eternity. I had just begun to process the enormity of what had happened when Emily came home. Her cheerful greeting turned to concern when she saw my face. "Dad, what's wrong? Where's Mom and Jason?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words to explain the situation to my daughter. "Emily, we need to talk. There are some things you need to know about what's been happening." We sat down in the living room, and I told her everything. I watched her face shift from confusion to shock, and finally to anger as the truth sank in. "Mom and Jason," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "How could they do this to us?" I reached out to hold her hand. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't have all the answers. But I need you to know that none of this is your fault. It's something they did, and we're going to get through it together." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe they would betray us like this. I thought we were a family." "We are a family, Emily. You and I, we're still a family, and we're going to be okay. It's going to take time, but we'll get through this." She hugged me tightly, and I held her close, feeling the weight of my responsibility to protect and care for her. We sat there for a long time, comforting each other and trying to come to terms with the new reality. After Emily went to her room, I felt a surge of anger and determination. Amanda had not only betrayed me, but had also shattered our daughter's sense of security. I knew I couldn't just let her walk away from this without facing consequences. Revenge wasn't something I had ever considered before, but in that moment, it felt like the only way to regain some sense of control. I needed to make sure Amanda understood the magnitude of her actions and felt the full weight of her betrayal. I spent the next few days gathering information and planning. I found out where Amanda was staying and who she was spending time with. I discovered that she had been seeing another man as well, someone she had met through one of her social outings. The betrayal was deeper and more widespread than I had initially thought. I decided to expose Amanda's infidelity publicly to ensure that everyone knew the truth about her actions. I hacked into her social media accounts and scheduled posts revealing her affair with Jason and the other man, including screenshots of incriminating messages and photos. I made sure these posts would go live during a time when most of her friends and family would see them. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to hit her where it hurt the most: her reputation and her finances. Amanda had a side business selling handmade crafts and art, which she was quite proud of. I left scathing reviews online, detailing her infidelity and urging people not to support someone so morally corrupt. I also sent emails to her clients and business partners, attaching proof of her betrayal and encouraging them to sever ties with her. Finally, I contacted her family and close friends, informing them of what she had done. I made sure they knew the full extent of her actions, leaving no room for sympathy or excuses. The day everything went live, I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt. I knew revenge wouldn't heal the pain she had caused, but it gave me a sense of justice, a way to fight back against the devastation she had wrought on our family. The fallout was immediate. Amanda's social media was flooded with comments and messages, condemning her actions and expressing shock and disgust. Her business suffered severe losses as clients and partners distanced themselves from her. Her family and friends were horrified, and many cut off contact with her completely. Amanda tried to reach out to me, calling and texting, begging me to stop, but I ignored her. She needed to face the consequences of her actions, just as I had to face the reality of our broken family. The revenge was brutal, but it brought a sense of closure. Amanda would never be able to escape the shadow of her betrayal, and that knowledge gave me the strength to move forward. Now, it was time to focus on healing and rebuilding a life for Emily and me, free from the toxic influence of those who had betrayed us. In the days following my revenge, the house was quieter, and Emily and I settled into a new, if somber, routine. Emily was my priority, and I did my best to be there for her, providing as much stability and support as I could. However, I knew there were still unresolved issues with Amanda that needed to be addressed. One evening, while Emily was at a friend's house, Amanda called again. This time I answered. Her voice was trembling, full of desperation. "David, please, can we talk? Just once, face to face," she pleaded. I hesitated but agreed to meet her. I needed to confront her one last time to get the closure I needed. We decided to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. As I walked in, I saw Amanda sitting at a corner table, looking a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were red from crying, and she seemed more fragile than I had ever seen her. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. "David, I don't know where to start," she began, her voice breaking. "How about starting with the truth, Amanda?" I said, my tone cold but controlled. "Why did you do it? Why Jason? And why now?" She took a deep breath, wiping away fresh tears. "I don't know, David. I felt so lonely and lost. You were always busy with work, and I felt like we were growing apart. Jason was there, and one thing led to another. I'm not excusing it. I know it was wrong, but I felt abandoned." I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my anger in check. "You felt abandoned? So you decided to destroy our family? Betray me with my own son?" "I know it sounds terrible," she sobbed. "I wasn't thinking clearly. It was a moment of weakness that turned into something I couldn't control." I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "Amanda, what you did is unforgivable. You've hurt me, and you've hurt Emily. This isn't something we can just move past." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I'll go to therapy, I'll do anything. Just please don't take Emily away from me." I sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I'm not trying to take Emily away from you, but she needs stability. She needs to be with someone she can trust. Right now, that's not you." Amanda's face crumpled, and she began to cry harder. "Please, David. Give me a chance. I'll do anything. I know I've lost your trust, but I can't lose my daughter, too." I felt a pang of guilt, but I knew what needed to be done. "We'll work something out for Emily's sake. But I'm filing for divorce. Our marriage is over." She nodded, defeated. "I understand. Just, please, let me be a part of Emily's life." "We'll figure it out," I said, standing up. "But this is the last conversation we'll have about us. From now on, it's only about Emily." I walked away, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. The chapter with Amanda was finally closing, and it was time to start the legal process. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer and initiated the divorce proceedings. It was a painful and complicated process, but I was determined to get through it for Emily's sake. We discussed custody arrangements, and I insisted on primary custody with supervised visitation for Amanda until she could prove she was stable enough to be a part of Emily's life again. Amanda didn't fight the custody arrangement, perhaps realizing it was the best she could hope for. The legal process dragged on, but eventually the divorce was finalized. I was awarded primary custody of Emily, and Amanda was granted supervised visitation rights, pending regular evaluations. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step toward rebuilding our lives. The legal battle was over, but the emotional journey was just beginning. Emily needed me more than ever, and I was determined to be the best father I could be for her. Our family might be fractured, but we still had each other, and that was something worth fighting for. With the divorce finalized and the legal battles behind us, Emily and I began the difficult process of rebuilding our lives. The first few months were a whirlwind of adjustments and emotional turmoil, but gradually, we found our footing. I focused on creating a stable and loving environment for Emily. We moved to a new house across town, away from the painful memories of the old one. It was a modest, two-bedroom home with a small garden, but it felt like a fresh start. I decorated it with care, making sure Emily had a room she loved and spaces where we could create new, happy memories together. Emily adjusted to the new school and made new friends quickly. She was resilient, stronger than I could have ever imagined, and seeing her adapt and thrive gave me the strength to keep going. I made sure to be there for her, attending school events, helping with homework, and just being present. I knew the importance of providing stability and security during this difficult time. Amanda continued to have supervised visitations with Emily. Initially, these visits were tense and awkward, but over time they became more manageable. Amanda was making an effort to rebuild her relationship with Emily, attending therapy and trying to be a better mother. I kept my distance, focusing on my own healing and ensuring that Emily's needs were met. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me and said, "Dad, I know things have been hard, but I'm glad we have each other." Her words touched me deeply. "Me too, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." Life gradually took on a new rhythm. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the structure and routine it provided. I also started reconnecting with old friends and making new ones, building a support network that helped me navigate the emotional ups and downs. One of the biggest steps in my healing process was rediscovering my passions. I took up running again, something I had enjoyed before the chaos of the past year. It became a way to clear my mind and find peace. I also started cooking more, experimenting with new recipes, and involving Emily in the process. Our kitchen became a place of laughter and creativity, a stark contrast to the tension that had once filled it. As months turned into a year, I noticed a significant change in myself. The anger and sadness that had consumed me began to fade, replaced by a sense of acceptance and hope. I had learned to forgive myself for not seeing the signs of Amanda's betrayal, and had come to terms with the fact that it was not my fault. One afternoon, as I was jogging through the park, I bumped into an old friend from college, Lisa. We hadn't seen each other in years, and it was a pleasant surprise to catch up. We exchanged numbers and started meeting up for coffee and runs in the park. Lisa was kind, understanding, and supportive, everything I needed in a friend. Over time, our friendship deepened into something more. It was slow and cautious, both of us carrying our own scars from past relationships. But there was a genuine connection between us, a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Lisa met Emily, and they got along wonderfully. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of happiness and possibility. One evening, after a particularly enjoyable dinner with Lisa and Emily, I realized that I was ready to open my heart again. I had spent so much time focused on healing and rebuilding that I hadn't noticed the beautiful new chapter unfolding before me. As Lisa and I grew closer, we talked about the future and what it might hold for us. I was cautious, wanting to protect Emily and myself from more hurt, but I also recognized the importance of moving forward and embracing new opportunities for happiness. On a quiet evening, while Emily was at a sleepover, Lisa and I sat on the porch, talking about life and dreams. "David, I know you've been through so much, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever the future holds," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. I took her hand, feeling a sense of peace and clarity. "Lisa, you've been a light in a very dark time. I'm grateful for your friendship and everything you've brought into my life. I think I'm ready to see where this goes." She smiled, and in that moment I knew that despite the pain and betrayal I had experienced, there was still hope for a bright and happy future. Life after betrayal wasn't easy, but it was possible to find joy and love again. Emily and I had come a long way, and with Lisa by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The past had left its mark, but it had also taught me about resilience, strength, and the importance of never losing hope. As we sat there, watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me to a place of healing and new beginnings, and for that, I was profoundly thankful.